Good afternoon. If we could get started, I'd appreciate your attention. In case you're wondering which session you're in, make sure you're in the right session. This is branding and marketing our local communities, creating a sense of locality and identity. Could someone kick the doors in the back shut? Thank you very much. All right. I'm Douglas Nichols, the mayor of City of Yuma. I'm an engineer by trade, so I'm completely unqualified for this discussion, but they've given it to me anyway. Just to give you some directions real quick before we get started. The session handouts are on the league website and also on your app, so if you download the app, they should be on there too, as well as the biographical information. So I'm not going to read a bunch of accomplishments or anything. We'll just get right to the topic. Please do turn off your cell phones. At least put them on vibrate for us so they don't get distracting. And so the topic today is about how to brand our communities. Each community in Arizona really can become its own destination by working on what its unique assets are. But it needs to engage its local uniqueness, not just on its features, but on the small businesses that exist within that community, within its reach of that community. So, and that's how you can actually create a sense of place. So our speakers today will share strategies on how to create a true identity, as well as provide rural success stories within Arizona. So our speakers today are Kimber Lanning, the Executive Director of Local First Arizona Foundation. Let's give her a round of applause. And Angel Martinez, the CEO and founder of Ignite Brand Marketing. And I will turn it over to Angel so she can get started. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. So I will start the first section of this presentation. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to focus on branding and marketing our local communities. Arizona has many communities whom all have unique identities. What creates a unique identity within these communities? Local businesses, for one, are a great way to create a unique identity within a community. The assets and attractions that each community has is also another way to create this unique identity. Branding and marketing are critical components in promoting the community. What tools can be utilized to promote your community? One tool would be a community website. Another tool, which is many tools, is social media, print advertising, and an app, which kind of goes hand in hand with the website. Spreading your community's story becomes a simple task if you utilize these four tools. Website branding and social media marketing are powerful platforms when thoughtfully leveraged, give your community the ability to establish its identity and spread its story to a target audience of your choice. Now, social media. I'm going to start with that. Everybody is on social media today. Everyone's on their phones. There are so many platforms to choose from. So before you put your marketing dollars towards a social media platform, it's important to know who's on those platforms. So I'm going to break down each one by one. First one is Facebook. Facebook has 2 billion monthly active users. Within Facebook, it's important to know that about 30% of retail shoppers who recently made a purchase discovered the product on Facebook. This network is also where millennials, Generation X, are most likely to spread their content, their information, their story. The age range within Facebook kind of varies. It's all over the place. I would say everybody's on Facebook. But it's important to kind of highlight that the most growing demographic on Facebook are ages 50 to 64, believe it or not. The next platform is Instagram. Instagram has 800 million monthly active users, 500 million daily active users. So 500 million people use Instagram on a daily basis. Instagram, interesting enough, is more of a teen platform. 50% of teens say Instagram is the best platform to tell them about new products. So this is a place that they go to interact with things that they enjoy. So, of course, the highest percentage is 18 to 29-year-olds are on Instagram. The next one is Twitter. It's a bit smaller with 317 million monthly active users. But the important part about Twitter is 29% of Americans with a degree use Twitter. So I would say there's more of an educated audience on Twitter. So if that is your audience that you're trying to shoot for, Twitter's a good place to be. The next one is YouTube, my all-time favorite. YouTube has about 1 billion active users daily, or monthly, 1 billion active users monthly. YouTube reaches ages 18 to 49-year-olds more than the cable network television, believe it or not. I have a niece and nephew. My nephew is 9 years old. My niece is 14. They do not watch the television. They will not turn it on. They go straight for their tablet, and they are on YouTube watching their favorite show, watching their favorite cartoon, learning about things. So I would say YouTube is a great place to share your story because a lot of people are on there for that reason. The next platform is LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a little bit smaller as well. It has 106 million monthly active users. LinkedIn is more of a business platform. LinkedIn is the most popular social network with Fortune 500 CEOs. So if your target market is business owners, CEOs, people of that platform, this is the place to be. 80% of business-to-business social media leads come from LinkedIn. So it's a great sales tool as well. The next one is Snapchat. Snapchat has about 300 million active users. And again, this is more of a younger generation platform, in my opinion. 39% of teens polled said that Snapchat was their favorite network. And I would say their favorite part of it is the filters. So now that we know all about social media and what the different platforms offer, the different types of people that tend to go and spend time on these platforms, it's important to know what you should share on these social media platforms. So as a small community or a community, business news and events are very important to share. Community involvement and charitable events and education. Education is a big one. When I say education, I'm talking about the history of your community, the attractions that your community has, just the education overall of your community. Now with that is the community website. I would say you would share the same things on this community website. News, events, education, and of course your small businesses. On this community website, when I say news, I really would love to highlight good news. Every community has good news and of course bad news, right? But on this community website, I would highlight the good things that are happening within your community. So when travelers are coming upon your website, they see all the fantastic things and not so much the negative things. I highlighted pictures and video because, like anything, an amazing picture an amazing video will keep people interested. It'll keep them active and interested in your location. Advertising. So there are two different ways to advertise on social media. You can boost a post. So if you're familiar with Facebook, you could upload a post and you can select to boost it for like $7. And what this does is it puts it out there to a higher range of demographic for that post. The other option is advertising. So you can create an advertisement on Facebook. Create a message, select a video or an image that best represents that message. And what's fun about the advertisement section is you can target your audience. So targeting your audience, you can target its specific demographics, such as their location, what their age is, what their relationships are, their income, what their interests are, what kind of restaurants do they like to dine at, do they love wine, do they love breweries, traveling, vehicles, hobbies, and what their behaviors are. Are they small business owners? Do they intend to travel nearby anytime soon? And if they do, you can target them with your message. And charitable donations. Do you have charities, nonprofits within your community that are doing events? They can target people that are more likely to do charitable donations. Now, before we do any of this, before you spend $1 on advertising or spend any time with social media, you should know who your community is. And sometimes people don't spend enough time on this part. I think it's super critical. You should know what your strengths are. You should know what your weaknesses are. You should know your opportunities, your threats. You should promote your strengths. You should turn your weaknesses into opportunities and promote those opportunities. Have a plan. So finalize those strengths. Finalize those opportunities. Create your messages around those strengths, around those opportunities. Identify your target audience. Identify exactly who you want coming to your community to spend time, to spend money in your businesses. Create a media plan. And most importantly, create matrix of measurement. If you cannot measure what these things are doing for you, you don't know what's working. So if you start it and then wait to finish it, let's say a month later, you can't really tell what's happening. Now if you start it and you start tracking it, and a week into it or 2 weeks into it, you see maybe something's not working, you can tweak it and then make it work even better, and therefore your money's being spent in a very, very highly profitable way. So with all that said, I do have an example of something that Ignite did with a small community in Arizona. So Ignite created a marketing campaign for a community that included and had the buy-in of 28 local businesses. These local businesses contributed a pool of money monthly. So each business gave us $150 a month that we put into a marketing campaign for the entire community. Shortly after the campaign launched, the city did match those funds. So it took this campaign and doubled it, which was fun. So what was the money used for in this campaign? And when I go through these pictures just to show you some of the elements that we use, notice the branding is very consistent. So the first thing we did is we developed a website, and we developed the content that went into the website. We focused on those small businesses that were a part of it. We shared good news about the community. We created an app that was promoted, that people were able to download, that went hand in hand with the website. We created social media advertisements that went international as well as within the United States. We focused on Route 66 because this community was Kingman, and Route 66 is a big draw for them. and that was highly successful, especially internationally, bringing people in. We also promoted the small businesses that were contributing to the campaign. Another fun thing we did is we created these display boards. And they had two options. They could choose between the copper and the black. And these display boards were put into each establishment that was part of the campaign. And within this display board were 3 brochures. The first one was eat and drink, so restaurants. The second one was play, so your breweries, your wine bars, your, movie theaters, bowling alleys. Everyone was in there. And then your third one was the local services and attractions, so all the attractions within the community. So the fun thing about this was each one of those businesses had this displayed in there. So when a tourist walked into their establishment, spent some money there, on their way out, they could grab a brochure and see all the other fun things that were happening within this community. So they were able to self-promote and help promote everyone else. We also created tabletops, and this went on the table of every single restaurant in the community. And this helped promote the app, which in turn helped promote the website, which included everything about the community. We did a billboard. We did a couple billboards. One billboard we did put in town, but most importantly, we put a couple of billboards outside of town so people could see the billboard as they were driving in, which was important. Results of this campaign. So, the results of the campaign, over 1.5 million people worldwide were exposed to the community message in the first year of the campaign. The website quickly grew to 20,000 visitors per month. The app had 1,300 app downloads in the first year. There were 5,800 people who liked the Facebook page that we created dedicated to this campaign. And in the end, Ignite and the community group were awarded the Arizona Economic Development Golden Prospector Award. It's a lot of words. So in the end, we were awarded this award just because the campaign was so unique to the community, and it did bring the businesses together to help promote not just themselves, but the community as a whole, which in turn promoted themselves. And that concludes my section.
Right.
Just to let you know, we will do questions all at the end to both presenters. And there are some seats up in this front area if people want to come up. I know it's awkward to walk, but I figured since I called it out, maybe you get an encouragement.
Come on down. Okay, thank you, Angel. I'm Kimber Lanning with Local First Arizona Foundation. By a show of hands, how many of you are here from rural communities today? How many of you are from communities with fewer than 25,000 people? Okay, and how many of you are fortunate enough to have a budget for marketing the town or tourism development? That's pretty good. Okay, fantastic. So my talk is going to be a little bit more macro in the sense that I want you to be thinking broadly about who your partners can be in marketing. Marketing is tricky, it's tough. And we do a lot of work going into the communities to build consensus around what a town's assets are. Now, you may be from a community that has a really obvious asset, and you may be from a community that is divided on what are the most important assets. And maybe this would ring a bell if I said some people want outdoor sports and recreation, other people want the arts, and yet other people want Main Street or wine. Right, and there's a whole lot of voices that can be coming into the mix that sort of cloud a message about what that town has to offer. And there can be primary and secondary markets, of course, but I think it's important to really engage your businesses in your marketing and brand conversation. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that. And so those of you who know me know that I'm a big advocate of Arizona's locally owned businesses, and so I'm going to be talking about the important role that local business play in helping to underscore your brand, and also the role they can play in helping to unravel your brand if they're not part of the conversation. Okay, and not deliberately, of course, but mistakenly, just not being able to deliver on the brand that you've promised. So at Local First, we focus on 3 key areas. The first thing we really underscore in the work that we do is empowering our entrepreneurs. And I'm going to talk to you about a couple of reasons why it's important that you need to be thinking about what your local businesses offer from a culture and sense of place perspective, and from an economics and job perspective, and tourism as well. When we talk about economics, we'll talk about tourism. We also do a lot of work around celebrating Arizona's homegrown foods. Again, by a show of hands, how many of you have noticed a significant shift in the way we talk about food? Have you seen more people requesting locally produced food? They want to know where their food came from. Okay, at least a few dozen of you. So that is definitely something to pay attention to. And I think it's important because so many of you have that one last local grocery store, and that grocery store can be playing a key role in supporting jobs in the area in food production. Okay, so we need to have them at the table to have a conversation. I mean, we, in our work, and I'm not going to be naming very many towns here because it's not necessarily good or bad. It's just something we can all relate to. We work with a local grocer that sells all organic, grass-fed beef from the guy around the corner, not because they think it's cool or hip or because they heard that local grass-fed organic beef is the new rage. It's because they've done it that way since 1950, right? And so their sign doesn't say local organic grass-fed beef. Their sign says cheap beef. And it said cheap beef since 1950. So how do we bring those businesses along and help them understand that what they're offering actually could cause somebody to pull off the freeway and go into the Main Street area to have a look at what that community has to offer? And the final area that we're focused on is growing small town economies. And at Local First, we really try to bring an innovative lens to the different opportunities that are out there, looking at inclusive economy work, making sure that our small businesses are at the table when we're having the conversation around a community's brand and their outreach efforts from a tourism lens. So what we're seeing across the country is really a shift in economic priority, and that shift is directly related to brand and tourism in that we're not as much focused on business attraction, which is getting a big company to move in, and generally that's a national company that likely won't play into your town's brand. And instead we're shifting to focusing on business retention and expansion for those unique businesses that you may have that could play a key role in your brand. And so we also focus on placemaking, branding, and marketing for each community. We believe strongly that every single community in Arizona has something totally unique to offer, and that can be packaged and placed in a way that people will respond to it. And they will respond to it with visitation, with positive comments, and potentially even with moving to that town. And then finally, we like to call out that clustering is critically important. Main streets weren't successful 50, 60 years ago by a whim. They were successful because they clustered an experience. And an experience is critically important when you're traveling. And I know if I handed any of you a map and I said, you have one afternoon to enjoy this town, and you open the map and there's this one particular area that has a bunch of little red dots representing the businesses that are there, that's the area you're going to go. If you don't know a thing about the town, you're not going to go to the area where everything is spread out. You're going to go to the area where it's clustered. And so it's important, especially those of you who have the infrastructure for a main street. How many of you come from a town that has an old main street that's been there? Okay. How many of you wish you had a main street? Right? Right. And a lot of times we have a highway that goes by that bypasses your main drag. And so you have to work extra hard to figure out how to get people off of that main highway and down onto your main street, because it is a unique experience. So the strategies that we use for growing economies, reducing economic leakage, this is so connected to tourism. Your best businesses, the businesses that we call them the front line, they're the ones that greet your visitors day in and day out. Your restaurants and retail that are the biggest destination businesses, they also need your local resident dollars too in order to survive. They can't just survive on tourism. And so often what we see in small towns as we travel around is more and more people are enjoying this thing called Amazon, right? And so I'm going to share with you as we get into this presentation why that is such a threat to our towns. It's not just the immediacy of losing those dollars, but it's also the jobs that are supported by those businesses. And as more of those dollars begin to leak out of the community, they can pose a real threat to the survival of some of your community's best businesses. And again, those are the businesses that are greeting your tourists inside and day in and day out. And the other kind of leakage is when the smallest towns, the residents of those smallest towns save up all their money to go into the big urban areas. And that's also an economic leakage that needs to be addressed. And sometimes that's happening because people don't know what they can buy locally, and sometimes it's a perception that they don't think it's cool to buy locally, whatever it might be. But it's directly related to tourism in that as you begin to potentially lose some of those businesses because of the economic leakage, you end up with vacant storefronts. We all know how hard it is to recruit new businesses in rural communities. So let's all work together to make sure that we plug those leaks and stop that leakage. Avoiding the big whale strategy. We need to diversify our rural communities and our rural economies more than we need to just attract a big company in to create a bunch of jobs and save us all. Now, both are important. Of course, both are important, but we need to have a balanced approach to our economic development strategies because those local businesses keep more dollars and jobs in the community. So we focus on creating a diverse and resilient economy also by leveraging local talent. Again, every one of your local businesses needs a website. They need a graphic designer. They need those types of talented individuals may live in your community, but too often we're thinking about going to Phoenix or even going to LA or wherever it might be to hire that talent. And it makes it harder and harder for young creatives to stay in rural if the local businesses aren't thinking local first. So looking around in that community to hire local talent helps us retain those individuals in those communities. And then we do a lot of focusing on tourism and events. We've done several tourism assessments. And again, I think at times we may frustrate communities because we constantly try to draw people up to the bigger issues. We recently worked in a community where we were contracted to look at tourism and why this community's retention numbers weren't that great, or I like to say rates of recidivism, right, which usually you hear in a different context, but in my context, I mean, if somebody comes to visit your town, how often do they come back? And so you could have the best ad campaign in the world. If people don't have a great experience when they go there, then they may be a one-hit wonder and they're not going to come back. So how do you increase those rates of repeat visitation? And so one of the key things that we found in that town related to tourism were workforce gaps. And that was that their restaurants and retailers were crying the blues because they could not find high quality talent. And this is not uncommon in rural. And so when we peel back the layers of those onion, I call it the onion, we discovered that Airbnb had moved into that town, and a lot of the affordable housing where the artists lived were displaced, and those artists were the servers who were there for the long term. They were not quickly turning over. They lived there as a lifestyle, and they were the servers, and when they got displaced, suddenly it's impacting tourism, right? And so when we came in with our report, the initial response was, wait a minute, we were talking about tourism and now you're talking about Airbnb and how it's impacting our workforce, and these things are all directly connected. So I would encourage you as you begin to think about a brand and marketing that you think broadly about the tools and resources you have in your community and those hidden impacts that you need to be looking at and considering as well. Again, I just want to underscore every town has an opportunity for a unique position in the market, and I'll give you some examples later, and then investing in your business corridor and clustering those businesses together. So I'm going to give you 3 key reasons why we think that local business is critically important for your brand and tourism. They are connection to place, jobs, and straight up economics. So the first thing I want to remind you is that communities that have a high sense of pride, communities that have a lot of what we call connection to place, actually have the most prosperity as well. There was a big study done by the Knight Foundation that demonstrated that for that hometown pride, the people in that community had a high connection to place, and they're actually more likely to vote. They're more likely to volunteer, to give charitably, and they're the ones who are going to stop and proudly tell a visitor where to go. Welcome to my town, right? And I think sometimes in rural, we fail to instill this in our young people. I joke, how when you ask an 18-year-old, what is there to do in this town, how many different ways can an 18-year-old say nothing, right? We need to show them pridefully, tell them the history, whether it's the oral history, how did we get here, in a way that matters to them, that is relatable to them. And in fact, Mayor, I'll call out Yuma doing a fantastic job. They had a competition for young people to tell their story in a video of why they love their town so much, and the winning video was phenomenal. These kids had it like a day in the life of these kids in Yuma, and they went out to the sand dunes, they went swimming, they did all of this stuff, and you wanted to go visit after you watched this video. I mean, it's a fantastic way to engage youth, is tell them, make me a video with your iPhone, as opposed to, writing it out or anything else. I mean, the iPhone was the way to go. So some of you have seen this slide before, but I always like to remind folks when I talk about the importance of local business being both jobs and economics as well as connection to place. So these local businesses are giving you a unique experience, that place that makes you say when your friends are visiting from New York, hey, let's go check out whatever place, because it's ours and ours alone. It's a unique experience you can offer them. In addition, they're keeping more jobs and dollars recirculating. And I use this slide just to visually demonstrate what I mean when I say that. And I joke that a lot of people, they take their Starbucks cup and put it under their seat on this particular part of my talk because they think I'm going to pick on Starbucks, but I'm not. I'm not going to pick on them at all. In fact, I'm going to call them out as the best chain out there. And I believe that for 2 reasons. Number 1 is they pay for the health care of their employees, right? About 25 years ago, big box stores discovered, wait. If I don't pay for the employees' health care, and those employees just end up on the state's program, the taxpayers are going to pick that up? And that's exactly what happened. You follow me? So they stopped paying for the health care of their employees. Those employees ended up on the state health care plan. And who's paying for that? We are, right? So we like to say that's not cheaper pricing, that's actually deferred billing. Thank you very much. We're paying for that in a totally different way. Well, Starbucks doesn't play that game. They just pay for their own employees, and that's great. I joke with people, I own a little record store. So I'll ask, who here loves music? All right, right here in the front row. Lifetime, 50% off forevermore in my store. 50%, everything at cost. All you have to do is pick up the health care benefits for all my employees. Do we have a deal? Yeah. Probably a raw deal, right? But we do this deal every day when we go out there. There are plenty of companies I could name off that don't offer health care for their employees because we're familiar with them. We shop in them all the time, but it's actually a raw deal. The second reason I think Starbucks is fantastic is because they're not in the business of subsidies. They don't come to your town and say, hey, we're going to demand money, give me a check up front, and I'm going to come into your town. They don't do that. They just show up and do business the good old-fashioned way. They pay their own way. Thank you, Starbucks. That's a great deal. A company like Cabela's, I'll just call out Cabela's for a second, they average $35 million per store in subsidies. That is their national average. In Arizona, for the one store that they have here in Arizona, they got $68 million for one retail location. That included free land, infrastructure, that included a 10-year tax abatement, a sales tax abatement. That means you go in and you buy your tent and your fishing tackle, you pay your sales tax, they get to keep it. And that's money coming out of our parks and our libraries and our fire department. So Again, back to the slide, Starbucks doesn't do that. Good on them. I'm very happy with the way they do business. But now I'm going to explain where your dollars go when you spend them. Okay, so let's just say you buy a latte at Starbucks, and you're thinking, well, what difference does it make? I haven't spent that much money. Well, accumulatively, Starbucks has the cost of doing business. They get all this money coming in, and they have to go out and do business. So they have to hire accountants and graphic designers and website developers. How many accountants have a job here in Arizona because they do business here? They hire any? Mayor, they hire any accountants? Right? Graphic designers? Website developers in Arizona, they don't hire any of these folks. Those are called secondary jobs, and it's a long list. It includes lawyers, and it includes payroll service providers. All those jobs are supported back in their home state of Washington. So 49 other states have no other secondary job supported. Now, on the other side of the screen, those are 15 independently owned coffee shops randomly selected from around the state. They support 15 independent graphic designers, 15 independent website developers, 15 independent payroll service providers, et cetera, et cetera. That represents dollars moving through an economy. And we could talk about the tertiary job that's supported when the janitorial supply company keeps the offices clean of the accounting firm, and the accounting firm is only there because the local businesses hire them. So why is this important to your brand? If we choose to only support big box stores or stores that are not headquartered in your town, we don't just lose the jobs of those stores when they don't make it, we also lose the professional ecosystem of jobs that exist behind them. And those are critically important dollars to keep your town lively and vibrant, to continue to support the brand and the visitation that goes around it. These things are interconnected, and I encourage you not to separate them and have two separate conversations. So now I'm just going to have some fun, just celebrating some fun community stories. And I see we've got Casey Rooney in the house from Cottonwood. I'm going to start with Cottonwood. We started working in Cottonwood a solid 10 years ago now. And he didn't know me from Adam, and he took off for an hour or two to show me his Main Street, and I fell in love with Cottonwood. And we started working together with the entrepreneurs there. And the first thing we did is we did a series of social media classes where we showed the businesses how to work together and thinking like a team. If you don't do that, too often everybody in your town has a Facebook page, and none of them have even liked each other from a business lens, right? And the goal here is to make sure that your best businesses are well represented online. So your traveler has an iPhone, and they're on the freeway, and they're saying, do I want to get off and go into this town? I worked with a town recently that if you Google the name of that town and nightlife, just small town nightlife, the first thing to come up with was McDonald's. And that just hurts my heart, because that town has great restaurants in it. But if, again, I'm back in my car and I don't know that town, and that's the first thing to come up, am I going to get off the freeway there, or am I going to wait for the next town, right? So our goal in working in Cottonwood was, the first thing is, let's get our best businesses found online. And we had great turnouts at those initial, and we had some leaders evolve from those initial conversations. From there, a group of 9 of them got together, and they wanted to put a weekend getaway together, and we helped them by creating a quick 3-minute video blurb that they could market online, and they sold a one-price package, again, working collaboratively. And you just talked about Kingman working collaboratively, but these businesses did this, and by the way, this is not part of the budget at all, but they're doing this, and it's benefiting you tremendously from a tourism lens. They just marketed it through social media and through this video that they sent out, one price, one package, come business for the weekend. And I think our goal was we were going to sell 80 packages. And we ended up having to pull the thing offline when we passed, 300? Because the businesses couldn't even manage that many, right? I mean, we sat there with the owner of a small cafe and thought, well, we never thought we'd have this kind of a response. So we expanded the window that people could come to the town in order to spread them out in a way that actually worked. And the town managed distributing all of the proceeds from the sales. So we had a lodging company and 3 restaurants and a cafe and some nightlife, and they all partnered on this, and people absolutely responded to it and loved it. And Cottonwood, I think, is a shining example of a success story that started with a lot of the local businesses in partnership with their economic development department, Casey's department, thinking about how do we work collaboratively and creatively. And in fact, for that, we won the Governor's Tourism Award for Creative Collaboration. How do we get folks from the big city exploring all of your towns? Our goal at Local First Arizona is to take 10% of the $6.5 billion that Arizonans spend collectively every year in California and redirected it into small rural communities. And we believe we can do that working collaboratively with all of you. I'm going to highlight Aho. Aho has done a fantastic job of rebranding themselves, but I'm going to give you an example. Aho, again, has the highway that everybody goes to between Phoenix and Rocky Point, Mexico, and if they get off, it's to hit Olson's IGA, the independent grocer that's there, to buy their last-minute ice and groceries. And Don Olson, rest in peace, he died last year. He was critical in thinking about how do I connect my employees to a better understanding of all that Aho has to offer. And I went in and I sat down with him and I said, this town needs you. We are counting on you. And I begged him to bring his employees to a customer service training. And he did. And we hired a local theater troupe to act out bad customer service and good customer service until everybody was rolling with laughter. And we worked with his employees to get them to understand the whole town is counting on you, that their main street is totally out of view and off the beaten path. And so through a lot of training and helping them understand, the other thing we did is we took his entire staff and we put them on a bus and we gave them a tour of their own town. Now that may sound silly to you, but 50% of the people on the tour, they were like, I didn't know we had a museum. It's like, how do you not know? There's 1,300 people here, right? But they didn't know. And they grew like a foot before our eyes, having somebody come in and show them how cool their town was. And all, they didn't know that the Curley School was a $9.8 million renovation, all funded with federal grants and other awards that the International Sonoran Desert Alliance won. Those employees didn't know that. So they developed a sense of pride about Aho, and we were able to get them to, they have a counter card now from the chamber that tells them what events are going on. So when somebody says, hey, I've never been to Aho, what is there to do here? That their employees don't go, nothing. Their employees go, oh, here, there's a Native American dance going on this weekend. Our farmers market happens once a month on Saturday, and we've got over 35 vendors. They care, and they talk about it now, and it's made a huge difference. So that level of collaboration. I also want to call out Aho as a town that initially did not know what their assets were. And to Angel's point, you can market yourself any way to anybody, anytime. And so I read an article that extreme athletes, they like to train in extreme environments. And I was like, oh, you want hot? We got hot. And so Aho did a whole social media campaign targeted European cyclists, and it worked. I mean, I think we got 3 or 4 different Germans to come out to Aho when it was 124 degrees to prove they were manly enough to do it, So there's different ways to market your assets. Don't think of it necessarily as a detractor. Think creatively about your assets. I'm going to skip over these because I want to leave enough time for Q&A. But I'll highlight just a business in Florence that made a huge difference. We had a woman that came to us. She wanted to open up a wedding destination, and she had no budget. She had an old barn and 2 beautiful white horses. And so she put the money that she had toward photography and building a website, and we taught her how to use social media. We taught her how to become the expert on weddings. She didn't really know that much about weddings when she came to us, but she started following French wedding gown designers and repurposing content for her followers, which began growing. She started posting all the time on what's fashionable in terms of wedding gowns and colors, what's fresh and what flowers are hip right now. And then she partnered with the wineries. And so anybody coming out to view her place, they got a tasting of Arizona wineries. I think there's a little something there. Give them a couple drinks and they're bound to say, yeah, we'll do our wedding here. But she took beautiful photographs of them coming in on these white horses, and she's built this huge business that has gotten people off of the 10 between Phoenix and Tucson to visit this place. And she's done it all on very, very little budget. And believe me, that is impacting their brand, whether they planned on it or not. Okay? And again, I just want to say, if your businesses are in need of customer service, sometimes your most grumpy businesses are the last to know. You need to have an honest conversation with them. How many of you have a town where your businesses have posted hours and then they're closed? My pet peeve, right? I love local businesses, but tough love. They need to be taught how that's just not going to cut it going forward. So we worked in a town one time where we created a sticky note campaign where we gave everybody sticky notes. They were trying to be a destination for antiques. 2 of their biggest stores would just close up. Gone fishing on a Saturday, right? And so you put sticky notes. We give everybody sticky notes, leave them a note. I came and I was going to buy that desk I saw last week, but you're closed, and so I bought something from your neighbor instead. I came all the way from Kansas, and boo, I'm never coming back because half of you guys were closed. And they come back on Monday, and there's 20 sticky notes on their door, and now they keep their daughter in there on Saturday if they want to go fishing. Figure it out, folks. It's not acceptable. This town needs you. So that's just an example of why it's important to engage them. I just want to highlight Sedona really quickly. We were just talking, we have the vice mayor in the house. They have done a tremendous job leveraging their assets and resources. One of the things they focus on is attracting weddings into the region. And they're so good on social media, they pool money together. And on Facebook, you know how you can change your status from single to engaged? If you change your status anywhere in the western United States from single to engaged, you're going to get an ad that pops up from Sedona, Arizona that says, "Are you planning a wedding?" And it has a beautiful bride standing out on the Red Rocks, which are so signature Sedona. I'll tell you, that is about the most brilliant marketing campaign I've ever heard of it. It's funny, Jennifer from the chamber, she always says, "Shh, Kimber, don't tell everybody." But I always say, "Jennifer, you're the only one with these beautiful red rocks. Like, don't worry, Don't worry, nobody's going to take your idea." I use it as an example. It's an outstanding marketing example. But what could you be doing in your town that is something that's uniquely yours, that you could be marketing to a very targeted audience somewhere on the other side of the world? So that's what I brought for you today, and I thought I would open it up for a little Q&A.
Let's give them a round of applause. We do have a microphone that we'd like you to use if you could. If you have any questions, anyone have any questions? I'll start off, and then we can get like a line started over by that microphone. Over there. That's where the microphone is. Okay. Angel, you talked about a budget on for like social media and stuff on a startup, a community that doesn't necessarily have anything to begin with. What would they need just to get started to kind of have an impact, social media wise as well as maybe a website wise?
For social media,
Just grab that microphone, thanks.
For social media budget, I would say anywhere from $150 a month and up. course, the more you spend, the wider your audience grows, but $150 is a good starting point.
I would also chime in on that I think it's important for those of you that are smaller, that may not have budgets, that you talk to your businesses, because if they pool their money together, they can do something significant. The town of Bisbee, just for their marketing, just to give you a glimpse, when we started with them, they all had their own Facebook page, and they were marketing this thing called Bisbee After 5. Have you all been to Bisbee After 5? Any Bisbee folks in the house? We got them to pool their resources. Initially, they each had a Facebook page, and they were promoting what was going on. But if I'm in Tucson and I'm thinking of going to Bisbee for the weekend, if I don't know all the businesses participating in their art walk called Bisbee After 5, I'm never going to find them. So they had a Bisbee After 5 page, but nobody was tagging or hashtagging the page, so there was no unified conversation. So the restaurant was saying, here's what's going on, we're going to stay open late, and here's our specials, and this guy over here was saying the artist is going to be here, and whatever. We got them to market themselves, and they were targeting a Tucson visitor between 35 and 55 years old who was interested in travel and the arts, and they each had to contribute $5 a month to make it happen. So a lot of times you don't have to necessarily spend a huge budget, and the businesses can contribute to that.
Very good. You talk about getting followers and likes, and if you're talking about tourism, it's good that the people in town like you, but it doesn't necessarily guarantee you're getting the visitors coming by. Is there a way to get those followers and likes in more of a direct way than just hoping the relative of somebody who lives there tags something?
Right. So advertising, again, especially in Facebook, is super easy to target your audience and target them in a way that will entice them to like your page, so they can continue to see the things that are happening within your social media page. So you can do it through advertising.
Okay. Did you have anything to add?
No, I think that's your best bet. That's the thing about social is unless you're doing ads and really tracking that, it's really hard to measure it. But for those of you that haven't received the training and you don't look at your own insights, there's so much information there that we all used to have to pay for. If you're targeting it, you can really, really track it.
Yeah.
Very good. Yes.
Just come up here.
Hey, unless you can really project so everybody can hear you.
I'm from Douglas, Arizona, and Timber knows this idea I had that last year. How many know about the Chapo Tunnel in Douglas, Arizona? Raise your hand.
Chapo Tunnel?
Chapo Response Tunnel in Douglas, Arizona.
There's 4.
Wouldn't you feel that would be a perfect tourist attraction for the city of Douglas? The city of Douglas administration is adverse to that because they don't want to get involved with what happened. So what I've done is I created a gentleman that's a private concern to actually run with this idea, because I think it would attract tourism to see the Chapo Tunnel. That was the first tunnel in the international United States that was discovered. Okay, that would bring a lot of tourism all over the country to Douglas, Arizona. So I challenge you, how would you do that when you have an administration that doesn't want to have it done, but then now I have a private concern that wants to run with it?
Yeah, so I think that rallying the businesses that will benefit from increased tourism to contribute to that budget. What was that response? No? You already did that?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's your best bet. I don't think that, so this is kind of a pointed statement, but I think that administrations need small businesses, but small businesses don't need administrations. So small businesses can make or break a brand. I mean, think about it. If you saw a great ad and you went to visit a town and you walked in and you had crappy service at the restaurant, your lodging was subpar, you've developed a concept of the brand of that town. That has nothing to do with the brand that you saw in the magazine, right? And the brand is, those guys either don't know what they're doing, or they're rude and grumpy, or all the businesses were closed. So what I mean is, those businesses are fully capable of developing and running with that. Yeah.
Can we give you another question right here? Yes.
Angel, you said in Kingman that 9 or something businesses got together to promote this. So does Kingman have a Chamber of Commerce?
They do.
Then why did the Chamber really take hold of this and get not only those 9, but maybe a few other ones? Because I guess my question is, when is the Chamber supposed to be helping the businesses within the city versus then they got to go off on their own?
Right. At the time, the Chamber had a different priority. And when Ignite came in, we thought this was a priority. So we got the 28 businesses together and we just did it ourselves.
I was just going to add that, chambers take on the personality and the priorities of the director. And so it can change over the years. But oftentimes the chambers are more focused on their largest members, or they're not necessarily focused on tourism, for example, and sometimes they are. And sometimes at Local First, we have great partnerships with chambers, and I think chambers can be critically important, but they're not always.
And I'll add to that too. The businesses actually have to be members of the chamber, and a lot of times you end up with that problem.
But sometimes it's not a big fee, an annual fee.
Correct, I agree.
But you're supposedly promoting all the businesses in the city. And I'm going to do a little promotion here. I think Sedona is the only one that has teal arches for McDonald's.
Yeah. But I would also say that Sedona is special in the fact that you have some sort of city-funded mechanism for your chamber for the tourism promotion. Oftentimes, tourism and chambers are not under the same wheelhouse in other communities, and they're not as well funded as yours.
You're right.
Yeah.
That was a good partnership that we set up because the hotels, and they're the ones that came to the city that says, we are going to increase our bed tax by 0.5% if you basically give us that 0.5%. So it was, we said, we'll tax ourselves, but it's going to be spent on destination marketing.
Right.
And we have other questions? Yes.
Question for Angel. Of the 28 businesses that contributed that 150 a month that was doubled by the town,
Right.
was there, or how long was it before they saw an uptick in sales revenues, or did they? If so, percentage-wise? And the second part of the question is, did the town see an increase in sales tax revenue? Again, if so, how much and in what time?
I don't have specific numbers, but I would say it took about 4 to 6 months for the entire campaign to really get running. And after that, we did have businesses coming up to us telling us that they were getting more visitors that were out-of-towners, and they were coming because of the website or an ad that they saw on Facebook or the app. And we also knew that as well as because those specific people that were visiting the town would comment on Facebook and tell us what a great experience they had, and thank you for sharing the message and letting us know what was there to do.
What about the town, though, seeing an increase in sales tax revenue? That's certainly something that can be measured month to month.
Absolutely. They did see an increase, and again, I don't have the specific numbers on that increase, but there was an increase.
Yes.
Just a quick question with funding. So most rural areas, they don't have graphic designers, they don't have video specialists, they don't have social media specialists. So can you give us kind of a bottom range and a top range to kind of go in and kind of do all this?
Right. It's tough. For speaking on behalf of Ignite Brand Marketing, what we do is we come into a town and we take a look at your budget. We take a look at what your goals are, who you want to attract, and what your attractions are, and we work within that budget. So we would help you gather those businesses that are interested, what kind of dollar amount is everyone willing to contribute, and then from there, we work within that budget.
I would also suggest that most towns do have some talent. It's just often we don't know who they are or that they're there. But like anybody in the house from Superior, Right, so Superior just had a woman move into the community that is a social media expert, and she is volunteering a lot of her time to help a lot of the small businesses get better online. And I think she might be the wife of somebody that was relocated there for their job. So a lot of times there's somebody there, we just don't know, and so it's a matter of saying, stand up and raise your hand if you've got any experience on graphic design or a website. Because a lot of times they have time and they're willing to dedicate to volunteer or to be nominally paid to help out. I'm saying they might not have a formalized business, but they still might have the talent. Right.
Question over here.
Yeah, one thing I've noticed, and I've worked with both of these ladies, is a lot of communities wait for things to get better before they fix up their towns. We didn't do that in Cottonwood. We started fixing up our town when the recession hit. And a lot of other people go, no, I can't do that right now because times are really tough. That's when we started fixing up our town and working with experts like this. And now we're at the point where our whole town is just an amazing place. But I never want to take that for granted because it can go down as fast as it goes up. So, great resources. And now what we're looking at doing is going out from our old town area, looking at other parts of the town, other corridors coming into the town. We'll never forget about Old Town, but there's other opportunities in the community. And you don't want to just stay at one part of your town forever and ever. So that's what we're looking at now is other regions. And these two ladies help us big time.
That's great.
Any other questions? Yes.
Kimber, can you just do a quick overview of why culture and history is so important as an economic matter?
Yes, so I didn't bring that slide with me, but one of the presentations that I do talks about, sort of just why people travel. And the vast majority of people travel because they want to have a cultural experience. A lot of people travel because they want to, some sort of educational reason like history or better understanding the cultures of a specific place. So I can't underscore, this particular state has so much to offer in terms of culture and history, and every town has a unique piece of that and something to offer. And so I guess I would just say I can't underscore enough how important it is that we leverage our existing assets to be able to drive new visitors.
Very good. I got one more other question on having a social media account and posting something sporadically isn't as effective as kind of continually being in the consciousness. Do you have any guidelines on, sometimes you see someone post something really, really long, but it's impactful if you read it, and then someone posts something so brief, but it's more popular than anything. Is there any guidelines on that or how to engage that on a better level?
I mean, for me, if anybody in the room, I think Casey may be the only one, but Mila, those people that follow me on social media, it's like a perpetual frustration that I can post something silly and nonsensical like, hey, I just had dinner with a guy from the Tubes in Chicago, and it gets shared and liked, and then I try to post something really serious about the impacts of Dollar General, and it's like crickets. And it's, it's like you can just see me at my computer screen seething over the fact that nobody wants to read my serious posts. But I don't have any rhyme or reason. I do know that if I post the serious and heavy stuff on Sunday, it's more likely to get read because people have time. And if they're busy and they're at work, they're not going to read it. So.
Okay.
Kind of find a happy place between the both. If you have a serious topic, if you could make it a little playful as well as serious, I think people are more likely to be engaged.
Very good. Thank you. Another question? Yes.
We have a very seasonal place and lead time for advertising, social media, and that thing into a seasonal environment that would be important to us. The other thing is that we're very, we have a big rock show. We're working on Buckconner's Western Days. I mean, so how do we promote those things far enough ahead, but yet they're not going to last all year? So how do we go about doing marketing for something that's
I would say have a plan together, have a media calendar, and just schedule it in. I think that's the easiest way.
Yeah, I think getting to save the date, and for things like that, I think, and this is just me talking, but I think it's important when you get the save the date out that you can show people all at one time where their options are to stay, what other things they are to do, because your goal is to get them to come and stay for 2 or 3 days or maybe even more. And so when you get out in front of it, you want to show people a robust view of what they can do when they're there. And then, like Angel said, there's going to be a planned timeline where you're going to continually update that. But you're probably, that's the trick about social media, is you don't need to hit a flurry until you get down to the final few weeks, which may be hard to believe, but there's not a whole lot of, in my estimation, people that are planning that far ahead, unless they're the people that are on your list that are repeat visitors that you've hit with the save the date months prior.
Yes.
It goes back to responsibility and accountability. Like this 28, I'm sure everybody appreciates you starting it.
Right.
But how does it continue? Because you've done your job, you got it started, but now it's not. If you got 28 people, in reality, but no one responsible for it. So how did you handle that you would continue on year after year after year or month after month?
That was the tough part for us because Ignite controlled it, we managed it. All the businesses had to do was tell us about your business, give us the monthly payment, and we'll do the rest.
Okay,
And
so you're still in charge.
the campaign has yet stopped because of funding, but I think that was the big part of it was Ignite did control it all, and no one was willing to take it after we were finished. And they didn't want to continue to pay us to continue moving forward with it. So that's the hard part. It's a commitment. If it's something that you want to start, I would say get businesses that are willing to commit for years so you see that impact. Or have it run by the chamber so you know that it's not going anywhere, or even run by the city, so you know it's always there and it's always being managed by somebody within the town.
Yes.
You said every town has its own Olympic. Well, my little town,
I can't hear you.
I'm sorry. They said every little town has their own little nuke in there, but we're surrounded by Freeport. We are a very little town. Our cotton fields are depleting.
Where are you from?
Pima.
Oh,
Our cotton fields are depleting. Not so much in Pima, but all the surrounding areas, because now it's cheaper to sell land than it is or more. They get more for selling their land than they get from farming it. So my question is, we have no hotels, so there's no place for people to stay if they want to come visit. They can go to Safford or Thatcher, which we do have a lot of that. Even when we have our Boy Scout triathlon, we put them out on our ball fields because we have no place for them indoors. A lot of them do end up in Safford and Thatcher. Safford and Thatcher get a lot of revenue when we have big events. Our little town is hosting these events, but we're still not gaining something from it because we have no beds. We have 3 tiny restaurants. How do you market something like that? We have history, we have all that, but because we're lacking bed space, I think that's part of the problem. What else can we do to bring people in?
that's a tough question to answer right this second, but I know you also, don't you, maybe I'm mistaken, but you also have an Easter-related event of some kind?
Actually, we just started that.
Okay, yeah, I heard about that.
We're going to, in the last year, we've done two other events. We did a tree lighting for the first time ever. Mm-hmm. All new councilmen come after. Mm-hmm. And we also did a 4th of July event. We're actually going to do it with the Boy Scouts because their triathlon comes in on the same day we did Easter. Mm-hmm. Just tying it all together.
And I know your economic development person works closely with Thatcher and Safford. But I would be interested to see if they've had a conversation around some sort of a shared revenue for not a huge number, but to help you market your events to help them grow, because they do benefit from it. And then the other thing I will say is that I actually highlight Taylor Freeze in one of my presentations, because this is a restaurant in Pima, Arizona, that started a thing of taking photographs of people from cyclists from all around the country and putting them up on the wall. Again, they have a Polaroid. They put the pictures up, and they have a map where you put a pin in where you come from. And you can't go by Taylor Freeze without seeing cyclists practically all the time. And that's really bringing new people into the town. So that is a good example of how a business can help market the town.
And also, Taylor Freeze just celebrated their 50th anniversary, same family, and they've had the same employee for almost 40 years now.
Wow, yeah. So there are things that that you can do, but I can follow up with you with more ideas about how to market
Well,
that.
our town manager was going to be here this morning. I don't know what event he's gone to, but he had to take his son and knock it off, so.
Okay.
My first year on campus.
Okay, sounds good.
Yes, in the back? Yes.
Hi, we're from the City of Globe, and we've actually just completed our branding project with Ignite. Angel did our logo, and so we're rolling it out tomorrow at the showcase. So please come in just so that you can see your work. It was such an amazing process to work with Angel and Liza. So we're super excited to be sharing it with everybody. And so through this process, which we include all the stakeholders in our community, and I think that's why hopefully that we'll have, continued buy-in from our vet tax groups and our neighbors, because they were all part of the process as we developed this brand. And so Liza and Angel were able to sift all this feedback into what we'll roll out tomorrow, which is Arizona to the core. So please stop by. We have some really good stuff to give away. And thanks, Angel.
And I just have to chime in. I've seen it, and it's fantastic. Congratulations, Linda. It looks great.
Any other questions?
Here again from Douglas. I was an ad executive for a long time, and one of the things I used to be given was told you need to get 60 to 8% of the budget of whoever you get in advertising from. And I've been struggling ever since I've been in municipal government to determine what the amount would be in whatever municipal government I work for to use for advertising. Because much of the conversations we've had with different cities, and sustainability, one we just brought up just a minute ago. Sustainability for advertising should happen on a monthly basis, regardless of where you're at. So I'm always having to fight for extra dollars to advertise my city in whatever way we can to attract tourism or attract another body. So the question I have for the panelists is that what number do you use? I get all the other ideas of having these small businesses try to pitch in a little bit of money, but what is that number? What is that number that municipal governments should use to have their advertising be consistent on a sustainable basis throughout the year?
Yeah, I don't think there is a one-size-fits-all for that, sir. I don't know. I would not know, and I wouldn't believe that it would be true. There's got to be variables depending on the size of the town. There's going to be a lot of variables there. I don't know what your thoughts are. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm from Wilcox, and we've kind of turned into the wine industry. We have 28 wineries now. Do you work with any of the wineries? Because as any small town like yourself, we find ourselves with a lack of funds right now to do a lot of advertising. And we've kind of turned it over to the Chamber of Commerce. And the wineries are asking us who to use and what to do, because there's actually a couple of guys that's been there a long time, like 20 years, and everybody's depending on them to do the promotions. Are you working with the wine industry at all? Because Wilcox is needing it. Like I said, we have 28 wineries now.
Yeah.
They're just buying everything.
Yeah, so we actually have not worked hands-on in Wilcox, but I will say that we promote Wilcox events through our networks that are all focused on wine. And of course, with the broader conversation with the Arizona Wine Growers Association as well as the Arizona Vignerons Alliance, we feature Arizona wines at all of our events. So we run the Devour Culinary Festival, which is a huge culinary event that's here in Phoenix, and we feature all kinds of Wilcox wines for sure.
There's a lot of them there right now that are new. Another one from California come, as you know, the fires, smoke runs grapes. They're legal.
Yeah.
And they're coming to us.
Yeah.
It's like, we get calls all the time. And the hardest part of Thanksgiving right now, getting the advertisement out there, because they were always using someone in California, or they had an old name for an old wine. Everybody needs help.
We also run an event that's called Weekend Zona, and 4 times a year we take groups of people out to explore different parts of the state. And we did one in Sonoyta, where we actually took people out to Kent Callaghan Vineyards and showed them how they splice varietals. And then we went to Dos Cabezas Vineyards and they showed them how they do the grape crushing process. So we're trying to educate and inform, and then we're also trying to have the conversation around the state marketing and tourism to be more focused on our 3 main wine regions. The state?
We don't have time for that question.
Events. They do 2 a year, and we go from 3,000 people in the city limits to 5 to 10 in one day.
You're talking about the vineyards themselves?
Yes.
So as I understand, and I could be wrong, the Wilcox Chamber, I thought they did multiple events, wine events a year. Just 2? Interesting. Okay. Well, I can follow up with you on that. Sure.
Yes,
Yeah.
another question?
Quartzsite brings up something that has not been discussed. We're on a major highway, I-10. We have a small local population. At what point do you start looking for LED signs such as Buckeye, rather than just the online advertising? We have a small population, large highway traffic.
I don't have any experience with billboards. It sounded like you did a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, putting up a billboard in a location where there's high traffic is always a good idea, if it's within your budget, for sure.
One of the things that I was never able to make happen, but for those of you that are near our southern border, a lot of the folks that we would like to entice to come across the border for shopping, a lot of them are text savvy, and so I always thought it would be a great idea in partnership with the Nogales Chamber to do a text marketing campaign down into Nogales, Sonora, to get those shoppers coming up. And they had a shared text list where they could actually reach customers to come into the community for shopping purposes. So that's another way. And the other component, the reason I bring it up now is because it was advertised by billboards in Mexico to the shoppers that were close to the border and that might consider coming across. So I think if you consider who might see it and who responds to billboards, there's plenty of market studies out there. If that fits the clientele that you're looking for, then I think that it would be worthwhile. As I understand it, LED advertising, though, is very expensive.
Yeah.
So,
Mayor, so in Yuma, we have a similar situation, and we did billboard advertising several years ago, and it's been very effective, and to the point where we work with our Visitors Bureau, and we don't want them putting billboards in town. We want them to putting the billboards, where the decision makers are, 2 to 3 hours away, so that people can, okay, I know that event's coming up in 3 weeks, and I can plan that into my schedule and come, as opposed to, hey, I'm already here, what can I do? And it's a more of a draw that we have found. It's more of a draw than just the occasional, hey, I happen to be in the area, I can stop in. So that's been the way we've done it. It's been successful for us. Any other questions? Very good. Let's give them a round of applause for their expertise and their time.